quite the luck of the Irish. St. Patrick's Day is next week, but wishing you all the luck of the Irish for the entire month and the rest of 2024. For those of you who are jumping on here live, benefits, jumping in, asking questions as they come up. We can make sure that we tailor this conversation to any of your particular, in this case, revenue questions that you might have. For those of you who are watching the recording at a future point in time, well, you miss out on some of that interactive benefits, but you do have the ability to watch this on what I generally recommend is YouTube 1.25 speed, so you can get through it in a little bit of a quicker pace. They're the pros and cons of joining live or coming in at a later date. Going to pull up the conversation that we have for March 2024. As that slide deck comes up, how revenue flows and leaks in private enterprise. In not these big public companies where there's a whole lot of other impact influences going on, but smaller organizations, small businesses, private enterprise, number of different factors that impact how revenue can flow through the business and also how revenue leaks out of the business. And that's a big part of what I want to make sure we cover off today. Two ways that you can ask questions for those of you who are on here live. You can volunteer yourself to get on camera and just start talking. And that's fine and acceptable. The other way is to use the chat button. And what I'd ask you to do is, potentially jump in at any point, chat if you've got any questions that come up, and I will make sure to answer those either immediately or as part of the ongoing conversation. Certainly had a situation last month where there were a few great questions that were preempting where the conversation was going, which is a good sign that hopefully I've helped prepare the agenda to support you. For those who don't know me, we open this up to all of my alumni and current clients. So sometimes we get some leaders and managers who haven't had the privilege to work with me before, if I may be so modest. And you can kind of see, especially if I detach my my video from that modesty isn't what I'm known for. But the general principle is I have been working for really almost my entire career, more than 20 years, with small, medium-sized businesses on a whole lot of different factors that impact them. This month, I want to dive specifically into revenue. And one of the key frameworks that I use to help visualize a bigger organization, once you've started to have a team and staff, and whether that's a half a dozen people or it's 50 people or it's 100 people, you've suddenly got all these moving parts. And it's a little bit like a car engine. If you can get all those moving parts connected well, working together, then the output of that engine, the energy and power it can create, gets better. And it's the same in a business. With the business organizational engine is when you can get all those moving parts working, the output, the energy, the revenue of that organization gets better. And so revenue is energy. The framework that we're going to use across the agenda today is my revenue flow framework that looks at the key ways where revenue gets leaking out of a business and how we can harness that energy better, because revenue is energy in a business. And the better we can get those pieces working together, then either the more power we can get out of our current engine. And if you can get more power out of your current engine, your current team, without having to hire more people, well, that's more revenue that often goes straight to the bottom line. Or we can grow to a bigger engine without having to add headcount. We can get a bigger engine, get more revenue, more power, more output, just by using some of these revenue tools. So what is your agenda for joining us today? Again, whether you're live or whether you're dialing in at a future point, what is something that you would like to make sure you get out of this conversation? And I've got my agenda up there. Just going to click a couple of the settings, make sure that we've got everybody in from the waiting room, while you just have a think about, yeah, what would your agenda be for today? Making sure that as we talk about revenue, are there any particular things you want to get out in a revenue conversation? And as I say, you're welcome to throw any of that in to the chat. If you've got some, specific questions or specific agenda items on revenue, add them to the chat. We can make sure that we cover them off. The agenda that I've prepared, what I want to run us through as a starting point, is this: how revenue flows from the head of the organization. Revenue is more than just the blue, the short-term activity you can do. The revenue flow in the business really does start right at the top with the vision of the organization. There's a lot to the revenue flow model, but the ones I want to dive into, particularly the ones where I see the most revenue leaking, are around your business model, your channels to market, and successful sales strategy, as well as touching on all of the other elements, including a little bit of time towards the end around the key outcomes, managing what you measure and measuring what is important. So that's the agenda that we have prepared. So this is the revenue flow framework. Again, I know some of you have been in a lot of presentations with me over the years, kind of know some of this. For those managers, leaders in particular that haven't, the way I work with small organizations, small, medium-sized businesses, is to make sure we get out of the content all of that stuff that's going on day to day that's filling up your head, and try and get out of that content and up into the context to work on the business, not in the business. And the way to do that is through the use of some strategic frameworks. These are frameworks that model how certain parts of a business work, how certain parts of a business work together in this case. And if we can have that conversation at a context level, you can often make quicker decisions. You can make simpler decisions. You can make decisions that are easier to communicate with your peers, with your team, with your people that report to you or the people you report into. You can have a more meaningful, more impactful conversation. And that then flows into the content of the stuff to hopefully make it a little bit easier. So revenue is energy. That's the context of this particular framework. It's all around how the energy flows within a business. And if I briefly go through those 8 elements, we can see, as I flagged in that agenda, how revenue flows from the top, from the head, which is the vision of the organization. Now, this is largely the way it's often articulated in a lot of podcasts or the literature, the research is the very masculine view of vision. Where is this business going? Have you got particular commercial goals? Maybe that's a revenue target or profit target. Maybe that's a valuation or an exit for some businesses. A key part of vision is also perhaps the more feminine, the more present energy, which is, what is the experience I want to have and I want my team to have when we come to work each day? And if we're not achieving that each day, well, then part of the vision is, what can we change? So it doesn't have to be this 20-year time frame that's the vision. Some parts of the vision might be, what are we achieving in the next 90 days? Or what are the things we need to change immediately to course correct, to get us on path? And when we think about that combination, we can see what an impact that definitely has on revenue in a business. If you want to be in a business that's going to be a $10 million, $20 million turnover business, you've got revenue of $20 million, then a lot of the other decisions you're going to make are going to be different to, say, an organization that wants to achieve $2 million per annum or $200 million per annum. The clarity of that vision as leaders in the business, knowing what the vision, commercial, cultural, personal vision is for the organization, impacts the energy and therefore impacts the revenue as it flows. And it's very easy to forget, because it feels like a long-term thing, to forget the impact that has on short-term revenue activity. From that vision, from the black aspect of the business, we move into the green. Green is about growth. Green is about some of those medium-term investments that a business makes. They don't necessarily bring in revenue straight away like a salesperson might do, but they do have an impact on revenue, particularly in the medium term and beyond. And that starts with the business model of the organization. That's something that, at a context level, a lot of people don't really often think about. It's a good, fun workshop that I get to do. It doesn't need to be a huge project within a business to look at the business model. It's more of a workshop or a conversation. We're going to spend a little bit of time, about 15 minutes, going through that framework this morning to help you understand what is the business model for your business, your department, your area of the business, and what are the different levers you could pull that help that revenue keep flowing. Brand is well known, and again, another one that is often misunderstood. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today talking about brand, because it is one of those things that, and really any of these 8 could be an entire workshop, entire conference all by themselves. Brand varies a lot. The nuance that I like to point out, particularly when it comes to this revenue flow around brand, is brand isn't what you think you are. Brand is how people talk about you when you're not in the room. And in many ways, it's a flip side of that cultural vision. It's the external projection. And if people aren't talking about you at all, or if they're talking about you in the wrong way, then that's a brand problem. That's obviously going to impact revenue flowing through your organization. Channels to market. We're also going to spend about 15 minutes going through this in a little bit of detail. I've got an exercise that I want you to spend a little bit of time thinking about on that one in particular. We are here in 2024 still in a period of some economic uncertainty. I talked about this for those of you, which was a lot of you who were here last month. We talked about the economic cycles and my feelings that we were starting to come back out in Australia, that some of the other countries where I have clients, relationships, the UK in particular, was still really sitting around about the bottom. Since then, we have actually had confirmation that the UK went into recession at the end of last year, may still be there. So they're lagging an economy like Australia. But through all of that uncertainty, when we go chasing more revenue and more growth, particularly if that's part of your vision for your organization, using good channel strategy is imperative. And there are a lot of simple mistakes we can make often, especially for those of you, and there are a few of you who have sales, business development responsibilities, a few of those that I can see here live. Sometimes using a different channel to market, get a different outcome, particularly at a different point in that economic cycle. And by all means, as we go through, a reminder, questions, comments, feel free to bring them through in chat or jump on the video. Sales then is the most obvious start to the revenue flow. How well are you actually getting the sales? We're going to touch on that a little bit, and in particular, one item that is very timely, which is around pricing in sales. And you see there now the revenue flow splits into the service flow and the cash flow. There's 2 different parts of the business. The blue revenue generating area of the business, which is where you're doing the work, whether that's you personally, whether that's your team, whether you've got technicians out there in the field or accountants sitting behind a computer somewhere. That's the process by which the work gets done. The cash flow is related to, but separate to, that delivery flow. How are we making sure that we're billing the money, that we're bringing that money in a timely way? And again, for anyone who didn't see the February 2024 Business Mastery Workshop that I ran, that is on my YouTube channel, where we go through cash flow cycles in a fair amount of detail as one of those things that, again, often gets overlooked. It's great to build the revenue, but actually turning it into cash is rather imperative to paying important things like payroll. And then the last item in the revenue flow is the key outcomes. How do you know you're achieving the revenue that you want? Not just that top line number, but the quality of the revenue that you're bringing through the business. And if you've got those measurements, those key outcomes, whether you call them KPIs or OKRs or whatever kind of buzzwords might be meaningful for you and your team, how do you use that information to come back up the revenue flow and make further changes? So the first exercise that I have for you is to do a simple, what we call a tick neutral cross exercise. We're going to go, I'm going to ask you to rate your organization. And if you've got a particular department in mind that you're responsible for, that feels more relevant than doing the whole organization, by all means, you can do that. But to rate your whole organization across each of those 8 areas and using this simple scoring system, use a bit of gut feel, a bit of intuition. This isn't trying to be an analytical exercise. You are tapped in as a leader in your business to what's going on. You will have a good gut feel, intuition around how these different areas are going. So you don't need to spend hours analyzing them. How do you feel? Is it a tick? Do you feel that your business does that really, really well? Relative to self, you might not be the biggest or most profitable. That might not be the goal. Compared to what you're trying to achieve as an organization, do you do it really well? Tick. Is it maybe a problem? Is it the sort of thing that maybe keeps you awake at night, or at least is a bit of a nagging feeling when you're leaving at the end of the day that you're not quite on top of that part of the business? Give it a cross. And if it's somewhere in the middle, it's not fantastic, but it's definitely not a problem, then that's a neutral, the middle ground, the cop out. So I'm going to give you all about 30 seconds to have a think through, taking some notes, and just score yourself. Vision, tick, cross, neutral. The business model, do you have absolutely no idea what that means? Maybe that's a cross, maybe that's a neutral. That's okay. Brand, are you famous for what you want to be famous for, or not so much? Maybe nobody knowing who you are is a good thing, but generally we want to be known for the right things. The channels to market, do you have good, solid, reliable channels to market to keep that revenue coming in, to keep the clients and the opportunities? Sales, are you converting? Are you achieving the outcomes that you want at the prices that are fair? Service flow, does the work flow through the business well? Does it get stuck? Is it okay? Is it fantastic? Is it a cross? And the cash flow, and managing the cash flow, bringing in the money, and then how it's managed. And some of you, that may be less your part of the business. Again, you're still going to have an opinion. You're going to be tapped in and an intuition. And then the key outcomes. Do you know what the key outcomes are? Even if you're not achieving them, do you feel like you're clear and focused on those, or is that a hole and a bit of a problem? And as I go through to my next slide, I've got an example business and how it's scored itself. You can see it's given itself a big tick for the business model. There's a fair few crosses there. And so this is one of the interesting questions to ask yourself, to ask your management team, is if this was your business, or based on the score you gave to your organization, where would you focus? Where would you focus your activity? And usually it is the crosses, and the higher up on that revenue flow, the more impactful that is. If you've got a big cross against the vision, that's going to have a massive impact on everything else. It's very difficult for you to improve the brand and really to be able to improve sales or key outcomes if you don't know the vision. How do you know your outcomes are successful if you don't know the vision that your business is working towards? So the higher up a cross might be, the more impact you're going to have. The other key thing with using this framework, and I love that this is a 30-second, 1-minute exercise that you can do on a regular basis. You can sit down in an ops meeting every month and run this exercise, have the conversations. I think that's a cross. I think it's a tick. Wow, there's a great area to mine for conflict or opportunity in your business. Great conversation to have, because that second order thinking is there. Well, what are the consequences? So you might look at this and go, brand and channels are a cross. Okay, so next 90 days, we're going to focus on those 2 areas. Now, what happens if you achieve those? If you manage to get brand and, particularly that channels is a bit of a shorter term thing. Brand takes a little bit longer. The higher up, the longer it takes to flow through. You open up 2 great referral channels. Maybe you try Google AdWords for the first time and it is really successful. And you do a referral campaign with all of your past clients. And because they love you, that goes gangbusters. And suddenly all of that extra work comes flowing through. Is your sales team ready? Like, they're a neutral at the moment, but if they get overwhelmed, is that going to turn into a cross? Your service team, is that going to be able to handle that influx, or is that going to fall over? And what happens to cash flow? Cash flow is already a problem. And all of a sudden you have this success in your channels, or you're investing in channels, and sales falls over. What's going to happen? So a key part of leadership is being able to get that balance right within your business. Be able to say, oh, well, look, we know there's some real opportunities for our channel strategy, and that's a problem. But we need to do a little bit of work first on sales, a little bit of work first on our cash management, data chasing, whatever that particular problem might be, in order to be ready so that when we fix that channels, then that we can actually handle the benefit of that. And this is one of the key things of being in small, medium-sized business. What I say is really anything up to about 120 employees as an organization is that you as a leader have the opportunity to go across departments to touch these different areas. The bigger you get, 100 people is different to 10 people in terms of how much you might cross over. If you go into a large corporation, you're responsible for channels. That sales, that cash flow is somebody else's problem. You're in private enterprise. You're in organization, not-for-profit, small, medium-sized business, up to 120 people, then you have to start thinking, and you have the opportunity to start thinking about the impact it has across that whole organization. And I think that's a heck of a lot more fun. I'd much rather be doing that. And that's why the coaching consulting work that I do touches on all these different areas in that size business, because it's a lot more fun having to work out those puzzles rather than just going, well, this is my problem. If I fix channels and sales falls over and the business loses money as a result, well, I got my KPI. So that sounds like a you problem. Would never really want to be working with an organization where people don't take responsibility. A useful exercise. Now I'm going to add more detail to it, just to overwhelm. Well, there's a useful, when it comes to the revenue flow. Are you Niagara Falls, or are you the sitting on the boat waiting to get completely swamped and overwhelmed? This is, I've lost the animation when I do this fancy little thing on Zoom. I'll get myself out of the way. So you can see here we've got those 8 headings again: vision, business model, brand, channel, sales, service flow, cash flow, key outcomes. And I've now added an extra little bit of detail. If you're the sort of person who loves a good screenshot, then by all means, this is a very good one to have. We're going to come back to this slide a number of times over the next hour. And it will also be in the workbooks, which will be sent around as well, so that you can mark yourself up and use this. So this is now more detailed. You can do that same tick, neutral, cross exercise at this level. So instead of just going, oh, well, we've got a cross against brand, you can actually come down and go, well, is that around the resonance, the strength and focus of our brand, or is that around positioning, where we sit in the market? Is that where we're falling? We've got a great brand, but we're just targeting the wrong people. Or, maybe we're targeting the right people. We're not having that strength resonance with our brand. You can start to get a little more granular. We're going to talk about business model. That's why that's circled there. We're going to talk about channels, a little bit around some of these others in more detail. So you can do that tick, neutral, cross exercise at this extra level of detail if you need. Otherwise, the benefit of this is it starts to give you some direction. Again, context more than content. If our channel strategy is a cross, like that example I shared, where is it falling down? Which of the 5 categories of channels is causing the issues? How do we dive into that and start getting some solutions from that context down into the content, instead of just throwing 100 ideas up on a whiteboard and doing the first 3, or that classic accounting thing. Accountants love numbers. You ever get an accountant to run a strategic workshop with you? It's amazing to me how often they get you to try and start scoring things out of 5 or out of 10, adding up a whole lot of numbers instead of just, oh, okay, we are intelligent humans who know our business. Let's get some consensus here. Let's get to context. In the time we have, not able to go through all 8 in detail, and certainly not all of those levels of detail, but pretty much all of them are contained in a specific short video on my website. So if you're not familiar with my Blackboard Fridays video collection, which I did in partnership with an accounting firm, Equal Opportunity Insulter, that's me. If you Google Complete Blackboard Fridays, you'll get a page at jacobaldridge.com, which breaks it up into the 16 different categories. And there's a whole lot of, a lot of them are 5-ish minutes long. to be able to get your head around a particular concept, strategy that may apply if you have one or more areas there that you're challenged with. And what I love to say is R&D, rip off and duplicate, which means you've got the opportunity to have a bit of a think before your next functional meeting, your next operations meeting, next sales meeting. Go and watch a video, write down a few notes, come to the meeting, go, oh, I've had a great idea. Don't need to mention me at all. You're welcome. Okay. Let's get into the business model framework. And you might remember from that big chart, the 4 areas of the business model: market, product, volume, and margin. And I'm going to take a hit of coffee because we're going to have to do some maths here very briefly. And focus to start off with on volume times margin. This is at its core what a business model is. How many widgets can you sell and how much can you make? And I like to talk about margin specifically. You can, in some businesses, talk about revenue, but I'm more focused on gross profit margin. And if you ever have the opportunity to look across different businesses in your career, or perhaps you work with other businesses, understanding their gross profit margin is usually far more insightful than knowing the top line revenue, because there's a big difference between a consultant business coach like me. There's very few overheads. Revenue that comes in largely goes to me, or if I've got one of the other coaches on my team, to them or to paying them. That's very different to, say, if you were selling coffee mugs and you've got to manufacture them, you've got to produce them, you've got to ship them from your factory in China or Acacia Ridge, whichever third world country you might be in. You've got the opportunity then to maneuver a lot of those, but you might be selling coffee mugs for $20, but only making $2 each. And that $2 is far more important for managing a business model than the $20. So here's a couple of examples of how you might look at volume times margin to understand the business model of some different organizations. So that first one there might be a law firm that, and it's a smaller law firm with that target. Larger ones want a lot more, but 5 billable hours a day, times, and we're charging them out at $250 per hour. So that's a simple way of calculating how much revenue could we bring in to the business. The coffee mugs, if you're selling 1,000 coffee mugs a day, a month, $2 gross profit, a little bit more sanity, not vanity, with that gross profit. So, okay, that's $2,000. If you've got a membership organization, maybe you've got a membership organization where you sell an annual membership for a certain fee. And so that business model for that is very, very simple. How many members do we have? How many subscribers do we have on our course? And what is the annual fee that they're paying? We should combine those volume times margin, and you can start to understand some of the financial measurements of that business model. And even if you're a not-for-profit, even if you're a charity, you still have a business model. You still need to be bringing in revenue. There's a classic Peter Drucker quote, I think. It says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think we can go too far down the cultural route, because without strategy, culture starves. Without commercial aspects to an organization, you can't achieve your mission, however altruistic that might be. So business model is dollars. This is a great little diagram. I've condensed it a little bit. The original talks about $100 million businesses because the guy, Christoph, who created this, wrote about it. He does venture capital. Venture capital isn't really interested if you don't want to be at least a $100 million business. Most of my clients are or aspire to be up to maybe $10 million. And so if we think of volume times margin, then if you wanted to be a $10 million business, if that was the vision, you got a number of different ways to do it. And this breaks it down into 5. The elephants, the deers, the mice, the squirrels, the mice, and the flies. And there's no right or wrong, unless there's some confusion within your organization about which of these business models you're pursuing. So elephant-sized clients might be worth $100,000 per year, or more. Again, you can dial this up and down a little bit for your industry. So if you wanted to be a $10 million business, if you were chasing those big clients that were $100,000 a year, you'd need 100 of them. And maybe there's $1 million a year is an elephant. And so you only need 10 of those clients to become a $10 million business. You got to go chasing the elephants. At the other end of the spectrum is the flies. So a fly is a client that pays you $10 a year. They buy an ebook or they subscribe to really small membership. We've probably forgotten now, but when WhatsApp was first created, their business model was that it was free for a year and then they charged you $1 a year. And their idea was if we could get 100 million people using WhatsApp, and they'd blown through that, and each of them was paying $1 a year, we'd have $100 million business. Then it was acquired and they made it free, which different business models. Then it's like, well, if you're not paying for it, you are the product. That's a separate conversation. But if you've got clients paying you $10 each year, you need 1 million of them in order to have a $10 million business. So some businesses, large IT organizations might go chasing those elephants. The flies, I feel, are more of a solopreneur kind of approach to business. Because if you've got a quality product, if you are able to make any sales, then you're much better off working on the pricing and the margin than the volume of the sales. I think if you have the ability to sell something for $10, you've got the ability to sell it for 100. And now suddenly, instead of needing 1 million flies a year, you only need 100,000 mice. Even that, for my business, well, I'm a deer hunter. Fantastic movie, by the way, one of 2 movies that have an incredible use of I Love You Baby in a live scene, the wedding scene, Deer Hunter. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. I'm a deer hunter. That part of the movie, not Christopher Walken towards the end. I'm not chasing huge elephants. I'm not going after big corporations. It takes a lot of time. That's a specific skill. I'm more after the deer, which means I need more of them than if I had elephants, but a lot less of them than if I was just chasing a whole lot of squirrels and mice. And so I find that's a useful way to start to think about different business models that exist, different choices that your organization has. And then you can start thinking about different products that you might sell. So the 4 aspects of the business model: market, product, volume times margin. Well, if you've got the opportunity to do different products, maybe there's some that are elephants and some that are deer, or maybe you've got some deer and some mice. What actually are those products for your organization? And if you know what those products are, how does the volume and margin play out? What are the levers? So this is a consulting. I do a lot of mentoring for other business coaches and consultants. So this is a specific math that I often do for them. If you're going to just be a gig or a freelance kind of consultant, you can see there 2 options that get the same amount of monthly revenue for that startup consultant. You can charge $80 an hour and do 125 hours worth of client work to make you 10 grand a month, or you could do 80 hours and charge $125. Different levers. Move them around. I know I would much rather have to find 80 hours worth of work than 125 hours. Again, that's the mice versus the flies kind of thing. Or a completely different product or a different business model entirely. If you only pick one of these, have a retainer. Okay, you've got 8 clients a month, and instead of doing hourly rate gig retainer, gig freelance kind of work, you've got them retained. That's a business model. They pay a certain amount each month. Or maybe you're doing projects. Because they're bigger projects, they're more impactful in a short term, you can charge a little bit more. They suck up a little bit of time. The math there, by the way, is horribly wrong. I think I must have had 5 days at 2,000 a day, or I've copied that over wrong. So come to me for business advice, not math, I'm guessing. Most of you have that are doing this live. Certainly, most of my clients that get the invitation to watch these have multiple products. An interesting conundrum sometimes as a business grows, as you go through that business life cycle, is that some of the products that used to be really impactful, that used to really help your overall revenue from your business model, start to become less helpful. There's an organization that I'm friendly with, I've actually worked with them, does a lot of international migration, tax planning, kind of accountants and immigration, a little bit of business support. And they're really transparent which I love, around their business model. So they got a lot of traction in YouTube very early. YouTube is their biggest channel to market. Most people can't afford their services. Their business model for their core product is $100,000 per client. They want smaller, fewer clients, more elephants. They added an ebook because they had all this traffic coming to the website. They thought, let's add an ebook because we'll get all this traffic and we'll sell them for $50 each. And so different product, very different margin, $50 versus $100,000. They wanted to see the volume that came in. What they found was that they were selling these ebooks, but they were selling like 20 to 50 a month. And they had to keep them updated because it was about a lot of tax law, which kept changing. It just wasn't worth it. And so they did this exercise and went, well, even though it's bringing in revenue, and even though nominally it's profitable because it doesn't cost us any more to produce another ebook, we can just sell them at a huge gross margin. Compared to their main product, it just was not worth it. And so that is something to be aware of in your organization as it changes and grows over time. So products that used to be really helpful, used to be a really big part, may stop over time. Or you need to add in, and start changing the levers. So, if you're that gig client, still doing the 80 hours, but how do you change your hourly rate? If you're a retainer-based business model in the consulting world, how do you get more clients? And how do you up the margin? How do you get that number? If you're a project, how do you do higher value projects? Or do you add in other products that you can maybe achieve that are going to really move the needle? And so that's a big part of understanding your business model. One, looking at the levers that you can tweak. Two, and then over time, making sure that you are reviewing those. Are you moving the levers? Do you have other products that you need to add? Or do you have products that you're delivering that are no longer meaningful, sensible for you as an organization to deliver? And if you get stuck on that product question, then often the conversation is who will buy your products, which is the fourth part of that business model. So you can have the greatest products in the world, but if nobody wants to buy them, then that's rather pointless as a business. You don't have a business model with nobody who can buy them. And one of the key things of any new business or new division within a business is that product market fit, being really clear on who you're targeting, and then making sure that you have a product that actually helps, adds value to that target client, and that they want to buy. And so the bigger exercise that you can do with planning product extension, with planning a new business, or with reviewing your business if you feel that this business model is the cross that's stopping revenue from flowing through your organization. The bigger exercise is to start mapping out the existing markets, target audiences. That might be geographic, like we've got Brisbane, we've got Sydney, we've got Melbourne. Maybe it's demographic. We've got these products for small business owners. We've got these products for big business owners. We've got these products for IT departments, these products for CFOs, whatever that target market is. Existing and potential, list them out. And then the different products, again, existing and potential. And then start looking at how they overlap. And this is just, again, it's more of a gut feel, but you can absolutely do the analysis if you wish. The gut feel, okay, well, look, this product is just not going to work with this target market. Maybe it's just way too expensive, or it's really complicated, or they just don't want it. Okay, cross that out. That box in your business is not going to work. Some might be a small amount of revenue. This particular product is not hugely, profitable. These people will pay a little bit more. And if you think maybe this is like a tax return for accountants, market B might be business clients, market C might be individual clients. Well, there's more money in a business tax return, but there's still a little bit of money in an individual tax return if you can get it. And the benefit of laying out this matrix is twofold. You can start to see which markets in aggregate start to be beneficial. So there's money to be made with market C across all four of the products in this example. So if we, through our branding, our channels, our sales, go and get more market C clients, and maybe they just come in and buy one product to start off with, But we've got the ability to then take them. They come in and bought product C, but now we can do products A, B, and D as well. We can flesh out our business model that way. And those clients are therefore more profitable overall. And similarly for different products, if you've just got products, product B might go, okay, well, that's the one that can go across the most markets. So if we want to expand our market strategy, that's a product we can promote. And then you also want to go looking for these boxes. And it comes back to vision. How big do you want to be? It comes back to your commercial reality. How big is the business at the moment? You might only be able to target one of these boxes. You might only have the team that's big enough to target one of those boxes, or the vision might just be, where's the profit? I don't care whether we're $1 million or a $10 million or $100 million business. I just want to be able to bring in X amount of profit without having to work too hard, go looking for the big dollars. So, okay, that there is the business model then. This is the product. That's the market. This is the volume we need to sell, the margin we need to sell them at to achieve those goals. And so that can be a useful exercise instead of what often happens in organizations, which is you have great ideas and you just keep adding to the list, more and more content, more and more stuff. What if we expand our market geographically? What if we run some ad campaigns that target somebody slightly different? What if we try this different product or this different pricing? I got a call in January of this year from a financial planner in Sydney. And he said, I've been through your website. You talk about being a generalist, helping all these different areas of the business. That really resonated with me. But I think maybe I do it too much. Could you have a look at my business and have a bit of a say? And I went to his website, poked around, and he had a pricing list, products and pricing. Thought, fantastic. This will give me an idea. I opened it up. Ladies and gentlemen, it was 37 pages long. And this is a small business, less than 12 people. Their product and pricing, which is their public. It's not even an internal document. This is something they give to potential clients. 37 pages of products and pricing packages. Do you think that might be confusing for the target market to know whether they're the target, to know which product is going to buy, which product's going to be best? And that's not come about, because he's bad at business. It's come about because he's good at this. He can see all of these opportunities. He just hasn't had that business model conversation. So, okay, what is the target market? What are the products they want to buy? What's the volume? What's the margin that aligns to our vision? I'm going to jump, unless there are questions that come through. I'm going to skip over brand as I flagged because it's quite a big conversation. And also I think, most people in leadership positions in organizations these days have a rough idea of what brand is. Brand versus branding still gets confused a little bit, but you've got an idea of the importance of your reputation. So the next one I'm going to go through is channels to market. And as I flagged when going through the agenda, I see this as an opportunity to often catch up with the low-hanging fruit that an organization can often forget about as they grow. They can miss things that didn't work when you were small, are now possibly going to have an impact, move the needle in terms of the volume or the margin that you're able to achieve, some of those business model aspects. So this is the framework that I call the 5 attractants. There are lots of ways that you can find a potential client, a potential project for your organization. And if I got you to list them, you could probably come up with a few dozen. And in fact, we're going to do an exercise using this framework to help you come up with a few. I break them down, again, trying to get up to context into these 5 categories so that you don't have to try and think about the million opportunities. You can just think about these 5 if you ever need to do a channel plan for your business. Number 1, more work from existing clients. Now, if you're a startup business, this doesn't work. You don't have any existing clients. Perhaps, depending on business that you've got, your background, your relationships, maybe you do have existing relationships at the beginning you can be tapping into. But more from existing clients is something that comes later. And that's why it's often forgotten about. It's often overlooked because it's not something you can do at the start of the business. So you build in these other channel strategies and then forget to come back to it. Now, someone who has already bought from you, assuming you're good at what you do, which you are, someone who's already bought from you, was already so far advanced the opportunity to buy from you again that you have the opportunity to maintain that relationship and get faster, better, more profitable work. Now, not everyone's going to buy multiple times. I'm only going to buy one coffin for myself. But the opportunity is there for most industries to go, what else does this client need? And maybe that is then adding more products to your mix. Maybe it's selling them the same product on a regular basis. How do you focus on selling more into your existing client base, your alumni client base? And the second, which again is often one of the best ways to get work, to get members, clients, projects, but is often overlooked, is how do you get referrals from existing clients? So, okay, they've used you. Maybe they only need you once, or maybe they've already bought your biggest, best subscription, and there's nothing more you can get out of them. But if they know you, like you, trust you, love you, are you making it easy for them to refer you people like them who will also know you, like you, trust you, love you? Are you prompting them to send those referrals? And this is something that a lot of small, medium-sized businesses actually struggle with, is your clients don't necessarily know just how much spare capacity you have. They don't know that you're chasing work. And that's part of our fault. Like, it's the sales process. You never want to go out to a sales opportunity. You go, oh, I'm desperate. If I don't get you to sign up today, I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to lose my house, whatever it might be. Like, you don't take that energy out into sales. That doesn't work. But then we feel like having that conversation, which is, by the way, I need more work. Who do you know that you can refer? Feels like that same desperate energy. And it can certainly come across that way. It doesn't have to be. The nature of business is that we are always looking for more work. We're either growing the business, growing our team, in which case we need more work to fill them up. And that's a story that most people appreciate. Because we're good, we're growing. Because we're growing, we need more clients who are fantastic, like you. Who do you know that I can talk to? Who do you know that you can introduce me to? Who do you know that you can hand out a business card to? Depends on your specific industry, what you're going to do. But you need to be active around that. If you just sit back and wait and hope, you will end up being disappointed, and you're going to leak revenue from that great channel to market. The people who think you're busy or just don't really think about it. It's like, I use you once a year and you're fantastic, and every 12 months I'm going to come back. You're going to get more from me as an existing client. It never occurred to me to actually have a chat to my next door neighbor or my best mate about how great you are, and see if they're using you as well. Prompting that can be one of the easiest ways. And certainly on that note, given this is the alumni client network, my business is growing. I am certainly always looking for more clients. And so anyone that you know that you can introduce to is greatly appreciated. Knowing, go back to my brand, the position, I work primarily with male business owners, with business owners from 12 to 96 employees who want more freedom and flexibility from their organization to live the life that they want. It's a lot of people in that. You probably know some. Maybe I can help them to get through where they might be stuck, and to help. The third channel to market is actual marketing, advertising. Huge category. What they often have in common is that there is an investment of money or time in order to get those. But how do you expand your reach? I've met a lot of businesses over the years who say all of our work comes from repeat and referral business. And they say that because they're proud of that. To me, all I hear is, you don't understand marketing. You don't understand how marketing could help you get better clients, different clients, more profitable clients. Those clients that came to you at a startup and come back every year and don't like the price rises, maybe you've outgrown them. You're still taking them on because you haven't cracked how to do marketing. Now, similarly, I've met people who say, no, I've just got this great marketing channel. I know my return on ad spend is enormous, so I never do those first two. And it's like, well, you're missing something as well. But if you don't do much marketing, then make sure that is a strategic decision. Make sure you have looked at your marketing options and you've decided they don't work. I'm going to do a little activity, give you a framework to help you with that shortly. The fourth is strategic referral channels. So we talked about referrals from your existing clients, your previous clients. Strategic referral channels is a little more strategic. What you're looking for here is people who will be proactive about sending you work. Now, the volume in that business model is going to depend. Like, is this, you need 2 new clients a year? Do you need 2 new clients a month? Do you need a referral channel that's going to send you 100 new members a year? And that's going to give you an idea based on that volume and margin of your business model, who you might target then. Because the best strategic referral channels are the organizations or individuals who benefit in some way from sending you work. Now, that benefit might be direct, it might be indirect. Certainly, there are business models where it is purely commercial. If I refer you work, I get a percentage of that. I get a clip of the ticket, I get paid, and that's my benefit. A lot of business models shy away from being that gauche around money, but there's often a lot of the indirect benefits. If I've got a client that needs something and I refer them to you and you can fulfill that need, well, then that makes me look good to the client. I get a positive outcome because you helped them and I gave that referral, so that works for me. It also protects me, because if they're going to go and buy that anyway, and they don't buy that from you, someone in relationship with me, they go and buy that from someone else, and that other person says, oh, I've got a much better business coach than you should work with, and I could lose out. So there's protection in that. So there's a lot of different benefits. Again, Blackboard Fridays has several videos that go into detail on that. It takes time to build those strategic referral channels, to build the trust for somebody to be able to openly send you work on a regular basis, and for you to hold them to account, to have that expectation clear. But for most businesses, that can be a huge, easy channel to market that is very, very profitable compared to, say, spending a lot of money on Google AdWords. And the fifth of the 5 attractants, then we're going to do an exercise to get you to think about some of the different things you could be doing in each of these. The fifth of the 5 attractants is the volume play. And this is about trying to get your mindset into playing a bigger game, whatever that might mean for you. If you had to find 10 times as many leads for your business next year, 10 times as many contacts going into your sales hourglass, what would you need to do to create that volume? And that doesn't necessarily mean that's the right thing to do, but it's a very useful exercise to be thinking about, how could I get in front of a whole lot more people? Now, what generally happens is the bigger the volume of the lead opportunity, the lower the conversion rate. Not always, but it's a useful thing. If you're used to going and meeting people one-on-one to get clients, how could you speak at a conference and get in front of 100 people in your target audience, or 1,000? Is there some advertising or some promotion, some sponsorship you could do that's going to get your brand in front of thousands of people? One of my alumni clients recently sponsored a big football team. Now, part of that I always feel is a little bit of the ego and the staff perks you get, the corporate box, the stadium, and everyone being able to walk around with their football team and the company logo on it. But absolutely what that has done, and they're a consumer-facing brand, so their target audience are mums and dads who watch the football. That's why it's a useful channel to market. But suddenly, instead of them doing some advertising in a magazine, their brand is all over the television every week. And so that is a useful opportunity. And I've worked with organizations that have got that out there as a bit of a goal or a BHAG, which doesn't really work. It's a different conversation, but a useful thing to ask. What would that volume look like if you wanted to 10x? Double, if you're already pretty big, double the business. How could you do that? And so this then is an exercise. Live, I'm not going to spend too much time. Hopefully you've been thinking about some of those as we've gone through them. Certainly if you're watching the recording, it's a useful opportunity to pause and to fill this in. What are some of the ideas? What are some things you could do differently to get more work from your existing clients? Is it reminder letters? Is it follow-up calls or text messages? Is it running a monthly webinar that goes out to all of your existing clients and their leadership team and says, hey, remember, I'm here. This is the stuff I do. What are some of the things you can do to make sure you remain top of mind, or to find out what they need? A research project. What else do they need? What else are they buying? Where else are they stuck? How have things changed for your target market since 5 years ago, pre-COVID? The world has changed. Your products changed. Have their needs changed? What can you do to get more referrals from existing? Are you even asking for it? Is that part of your sales process to plant the seed that you will ask for referrals? Is that a communication that you send out as part of your process? Somebody has a great outcome on a project, the service. Do you send out a prompt that says, please remember to tell your neighbors, tell your friends, we're here, we're helping, actively prompting and reminding them? What are some of the marketing things? Maybe they're marketing things you are already doing that are getting results. Maybe they're marketing ideas you would love to explore and test. I talk a lot about the marketing hypothesis. Marketing is not a science where you can know everything in advance. It's a science where you have to run the hypothesis, which is, I feel if we invest $1,000 into this marketing opportunity, it will bring in this much work. And then you run that test and you measure it, and it either does or it doesn't. And that gives you more information to go and do the next test. And maybe things that used to work no longer do, because the business model's changing, the market's changing, your organization's changing. Do you have strategic referral channels? Who are they? What kind of categories could they be? I know, just looking at some of the people who are here live, you've got builders who are going to send you a steady supply of work. Now, they're kind of the clients and they're kind of a referral channel. But if you build those relationships, it takes longer, but they send through that work on a regular basis. How could you get more strategic referral channels in your organization who can send through? They work with your ideal client and they're in a position to refer to you, and they benefit from it in some way. And then lastly, that volume play. If you did have to think outside the box, if you did have to 10x, 2x, just go after something much bigger, what could that look like? And you start to build up a long list. And this is one of the areas where channels to marketing specifically, can start to get a little bit challenging. Is, well, I've got so many different things I can do, and you spread yourself too thin. And so the final framework that I want to share around the channels to market is the bullseye for helping focus them. And not every idea you're going to invest in is a bullseye, but if you've got some that are, then they're the ones you want to start with. The bullseye is this combination, this Venn diagram. So if you look at that long list that you've just created, you look at that, and then you come back, you can examine each of those against these three criteria. Firstly, is it easy to systemize? Is that something that you can just do once? If you sponsor a football team, right, that's actually pretty easy to systemize. Like, they make it easy because they want your money. You write a really big check, very easy to systemize. Reminder letters, go back out to past clients. That's fairly easy to systemize if you've got the right software. So, okay, that's a tick. Something like having to make 100 phone calls a day can be a little trickier depending on your business. Is it cost effective? It's all well and good to know that there's $1 million worth of work that can come from spending $500,000 on that channel. But if you don't have $500,000 lying around, you can't actually make that investment. If you don't have the team ready to do the $1 million worth of work, it's not cost effective. So even great ideas might fail on that one. Is it cost effective to implement that strategy for your organization today? That can change over time. And then the third one, does it move the needle? Does it actually make an impact on your business? And this is where it's easy to get a little bit stuck up, especially if you change roles, go into a new business, something that used to work at your old business, maybe just doesn't move the needle anymore. So you might have a really great approach to market that brings in 2 new clients a month. But if they're small clients, that particular product sells 1,000 of those a month. Doing that work to bring in 2 is not really moving the needle. It's not really going to be a great outcome for you and for your organization. So you might need to think, and this is one of the areas where the 5 attractants marketing changes over time. Is it something that worked when you had 10 clients and you're getting 2 extra a month, and that's fantastic? Now you're getting 1,000, that's not going to work. And so sometimes you have to stop doing things that have worked in the past You got to stop working with certain types of clients. You got to stop charging the low prices. You got to stop doing some channels to market. Not because they stop working entirely, just because they're no longer the best thing for your organization to do for where it's headed. So if you take that long list from the previous exercise, you can run all of them over there. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and make you do it now. Might have a gut feel depending on the list, and start with three. What are the three bullseyes that you've got, or the three closest to the bullseyes that you've got from that list that you could either keep doing or do differently? And then the more they get systemized, the more time you've got, more revenue you've got to add more in. And that's how you build those channels to market over time, not by starting 10 at once, by starting small, systemizing them, getting the commercial results, and continuing to grow that list of implemented strategies. Going to move now from channels into sales. Briefly said I wanted to focus on one key part of sales. So I'm going to touch on it in general. Sales, this is a nice little formula to think about for sales, the formula for more revenue. How much activity are you doing? What are your conversion rates? What's the value? How much can you sell your service for? And what's the retention like on your clients? Are they one and done? Some businesses, that's the case. Again, I'm only going to buy one coffin for myself. For others, retention is far more profitable. Doing a business model for a client at the moment that's raising some capital. And the key number that he's got to try and work out and be able to justify is he thinks the average client's going to be there for at least 5 years. But small, small margin per month, but the retention he's going to have is enormous. And so that's the business model opportunity that he's got to try and pitch. Now, activity and conversion, we often think in some businesses it's fine. We often think, especially if we haven't had much of a sales role, just in terms of how many leads do I get, how many do I convert? And so I'd encourage you, again, think about the sales funnel, or as I prefer, the sales hourglass, which starts to look at how you get that more from existing referrals, from existing kind of conversations. Activity all the way through, and conversion rates all the way through. How many people do you convert into being a contact, an inquiry, an opportunity? How many of them do you convert to be engaged, to actually getting a proposal from you, to having a real sales opportunity? And how many of them do you convert into a commitment sale or an actual ideal client? So there's different conversion rates down here. There's different activities you got to do at each of those different colors. That's the sales conversation. If I focus down here, going to look at pricing in particular, because pricing is in general, and then specifically at the moment, it's kind of I think the biggest overlooked opportunity for most private enterprise, small, medium-sized businesses, organizations that we've got going on. This is a project that it can be incredibly valuable to do, is to do a bit of a client analysis and to get an understanding. You might have heard of the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the outcomes, a lot of areas, come from 20% of the input. I've done this on a number of different companies, and it shows up a whole lot, where you've got 80% of the profit comes from 20% of the clients. And it's doing that analysis around, well, what are the 20% that are profitable? What are the products that we're selling, or the clients that we're working with, that are actually delivering the most profit, the most revenue? And what are some of the things we can do from a pricing perspective that can improve those outcomes overall? It might not change the 80-20 ratio, but if it makes all of our clients, then how can that help us overall? The analogy I like to use, it's beer. Beer's going to come up a couple of times here when we talk about pricing, and if you actually do a lot of research, you'll see a lot of research has been done around pricing beers at pubs, bottle shops, off licenses, those kind of things. But I'm going to talk about a party. I want you to imagine that you have hosted a party, one of those house parties, keggers. Maybe you're 22 again. Everyone's drinking bottled beer because that's trendy or that's your network, whatever it might be. Big blowout party. You wake up the next morning, stumble into the kitchen, open the fridge. What is the perfect number of beers that are left in the fridge for you to know you've had a great party? How many beers should be left after a great party where everyone's been drinking bottles of beer? And often what we think about, might have thought the same, often what we think about is zero. You know, I want nothing left. I want everybody to have drunk. The problem with zero beers in your fridge the next morning is that can mean that maybe some people missed out. There were people who wanted another beer, but weren't able to because you ran out. So I say the perfect number of beers left in your fridge the next morning is one. It means that everybody who wanted a beer got a beer. You didn't run out, but you also didn't overcater. You don't have $500 worth of beers still sitting there that you're going to have to drink yourself over the next few days. One is the perfect number of beers. You got that balance absolutely right. And how does that relate to pricing? Well, again, I talked to some business owners who are really proud of the fact that they've got this 90, 95, 100% sales conversion rate. And what that tells me is that just like having no beers means some people might have missed out on a beer they wanted. If you've got a 100% conversion rate, then you are almost certainly missing out on some of the profit, you know, because it's revenue with that client. But if you're doing the same work for more money, that goes straight through as profit surplus to the organization. If you are winning all of the work, then you are too cheap. You are leaving money on the table. And again, money is energy for your business. You can't afford to go leaking revenue, particularly at this point in the economic cycle. So if your conversion rate is too high, that can be a bad thing, even though it may feel like a good thing. So when it comes to pricing, do you have a documented pricing strategy for your business? And do you, in your role, even know how prices are set? Do you, you know, some of you are in BDM roles, sales roles, you've got some ability to pull those levers kind of things. And others, it's like, no, this is just the price that we're told. Are you aware of how that? Do you know how your customers make a decision to buy? It's surprising, you know, a lot of pricing decisions in small, medium-sized businesses are a gut feel by the owner or the salesperson. I reckon this is what it's worth. I reckon this is what the client will pay. This is the value to them. I reckon this is what we can get away with. Sometimes the pricing's based on competition. If you've got tenders, you might have to factor that in. Competition is far less relevant for private enterprise, small, medium-sized businesses because there's so much work to go around. There's so many different ways that you can position yourself. Someone has to be the most expensive in your market. May as well be you if you're doing a good job, if that fits with your brand and your business model. But is pricing something you have strategic conversations with? And if you want to increase the flow of revenue through the business, pricing is one of the quickest levers you can pull. And depends a little bit on your business model. If you've got annual subscriptions, memberships, the sort of thing you can't just turn on and off. That's a monthly thing. If you've got people signing up all year, absolutely. I can't go through all of your businesses. By all means, questions if you have them. But to give a few examples, some cool little pricing strategies. I'm going to talk about first a client of mine. A lot of these are client stories for me, my team over 20 years. She was selling a service into other businesses, and she was charging $5,000, which she'd come out of that. We talked a little bit earlier, some of those consulting models, that gig, it was like $100, $125 an hour. Suddenly she was selling this project for $5,000, which was huge money compared to $125 an hour. But it was a lot of hours. It was a lot of time. And I also felt the value she was bringing was enormous. She was way undercharging herself, and she could charge a whole lot more. And she wasn't sure just how much more she could actually charge. What would people buy? What would they value? How good were her sales skills to be able to sell it? It might be worth $50,000, but if she's terrible at sales, she's not going to convince anyone. But we knew it was worth more than 5,000. And so the challenge I set her, it was a project she did. She was doing 2 a month. It wasn't an advertised price on the website. I said, next time you go and sell it, add $1,000 to the price. So instead of selling it for 5,000, sell it for 6, and keep adding $1,000 to the price until somebody says no. And that's going to give you an idea of where the market is. If someone says no, well, that's okay. You're doing 2 of these a month. Like you might raise it to 6,000. Someone says no, you bring it back to 5, or maybe we try 5.5. Like it's worth doing that experiment. And so she did. She raised it to 6,000. They said yes. Went out the next time, she raised it to 7,000. Ladies and gentlemen, she got to $13,500 before somebody said no. Which also tells me that she was cheating a little bit. She started going up in $500 increments. She didn't believe herself. $13,500 before somebody said no. She'd been selling it for 5,000. The value was there. Same amount of work. How much energy does that bring into the business when you're charging market value instead of just kind of feeling a little bit small? And that's a very simple experiment to run if that's your kind of business model. Membership organization. I love this one. This was part of my team. I can't take actual credit for this, but membership organization. This was in the UK. I do a bit of work in the UK as well as Australia, North America. They were charging their members £99 a year for membership access. They wanted to grow. They had some ideas. They'd struggled with strategy. My team went in. That's what we do. We put a proposal. There was a big opportunity for them to grow. They needed a lot of help on the implementation as well as the strategy. So our proposal was £100,000 project over 12 months. And they could absolutely afford it. They were successful, but that's still a big number, right? This is not a pricing thing around us. This was a pricing thing for the client, because their feedback was, okay, we love it. We trust you. Where are we going to find an extra £100,000 in order to grow this? And the guy I was working with, brilliant, very good salesperson. He got up on a whiteboard and he said, well, you're currently charging £99 per year. You're now charging £99 and 99p. They had 100,000 members. Story would have been better if I'd mentioned that earlier. 100,000 members, an extra 99p, there's £99,000. And the question you've got to ask yourself in a pricing space is there a single person who values that membership organization who is already paying £99, or who would pay £99, but would not pay £99 and 99p? Is there anyone who's going, you know what, that last 99 pence, that's do it for me, I'm out? And so then if you think of your business and the pricing for your organization, where are some of those levels? We're in a period of rapid inflation at the moment, the last 2 years, which is an opportunity. Your costs have gone up. Hopefully, for those of your employees, your wages have gone up. That all starts to eat into the bottom line of the business. Is where is that money going to come from? We have to put up our prices. And the more you're in business, the better you get. The longer your organization exists, the better you get, the more value you are bringing. The more value you bring, the more you ought to be pricing. And so you might put your prices up. And what I see in a lot of businesses is, particularly B2C, selling into consumers, you've got a few different products, is you do this across the board. We're going to put all the prices up by 5% or 10%. And you start to get these strange numbers. It's like, now it's $504. It was $499. Now it's $504. You start to get, you've got to think more strategically about pricing. You've got to think about that customer. You've got to think about the emotion that they're buying with. Because weird as it may be, we know from research that there are people who won't pay $504, but will pay $499 or $497. Used to be 9s, then we changed to 7s. It's a weird psychological thing, but you can literally, like, people will pay the extra 99p, but if you charged £100, if you charge $504 instead of $499, you will win less work. You'll probably be worse off. So sometimes you have to hold the prices artificially low on those products, and then they get the big jump. In a couple of years, they go to $509, $519 or something like that. But similarly, maybe you've got a product which is, you've done that increase and now it's $524. So I'm saying on some, you're going to have to bring that price back to a price point. But with others, swings and roundabouts, you might be able to go up, because if they're going to pay $524, they'll probably pay $529. And maybe they'll pay $549. So all that psychological, emotional aspect to buying comes in a little bit around competition, but there are not too many people paying $524 that won't pay $549. which seems weird when that's 25 bucks, but I was saying there's $5 over here that can be a level. Sometimes you have to test it. You've absolutely got to have strategy around the pricing, and you have that opportunity with pricing to pull that lever to make a real impact on the revenue flow of the business. And sometimes that is a big price increase. Sometimes it is the 5,000 to 13,500, which, if that was going out to a client, even though it's fair value, you might lose some clients. But again, I have seen bigger price increases than that. The last pricing example that I'll give you was an accounting firm. They had a dozen clients, this really obscure little need. I can't quite remember what it was in the content, because I'm the context guy. They were losing money. We did the client analysis. They were losing money on those 12 clients. It was just so much work for the amount that they thought they could charge those clients, that it just was not worth it. And they had a few different options. The one that we went with as a pricing strategy was we wrote a lovely letter to all of them. We had the follow-up calls all planned, where we tripled the price of that service. We've raised the price, so it was, I can't quite remember, it was $3,000 or $4,000 a year. Suddenly became $12,000 a year for exactly the same service. And in the letter, we were very polite. We said, we understand this is a large increase. If you have another firm that will be able to support you, we will do everything we can to transfer at no cost to make sure that the transition works, because we're losing clients, we're losing money. Giving away a client you're losing money on is better for your business, as long as you can replace that work with something more profitable. All 12 of those clients stayed. All 12 of those clients accepted a 300% price increase because the value was there, because they built that loyalty and trust. And so when you're thinking about, can I put my prices up by 5%? If you haven't in the last few years, absolutely you need to, just to keep in touch with all of your costs. But you got to think, people out there are successfully tripling their prices. What's holding you back from charging what you're worth? You've got to make sure you do a good service, though. You've got to make sure you bring in that cash flow. The last topic for today is around the key outcomes and the key measurements. What are the favorite measurements that you have? And the saying is, you manage what you measure. It is certainly possible with some indicators to measure the wrong thing, or to feel like you're measuring the right things, but then to have it manipulated. So when it comes to choosing the key outcomes, and I'm going to explain the 5 examples I've got there, the 5 starting points I have in this model, because they are great. They are not universal. Before I do that, I want to give you another great story, and I'm going to throw Telstra under the bus, big telecommunications company in Australia that most of us love to, they're not everyone's best friend. But they had, at various points in time, they have had issues around complaints. And so they built in measurement. Key executive, here is your key outcome that we are measuring, is the number of calls through to the complaints department each month. And that number has to go down by 20%. And if it does, you get a bonus. Now, we can sit here, and particularly private enterprise, we know that, there's a sensible way to approach that. How do we get the number of complaints down by 20%, right? Like, how do we do a better job, better service? We set better expectations, follow up. What are the things we can do? If my KPI is to reduce complaints by 20%, how do I do better to reduce complaints? But the measurement wasn't, how do you do better? The measurement was reduce the number of calls to the complaints department by 20%. Easy thing for them to measure. They're Telstra, they can measure what's going on the phone lines. This executive cut the number of phone lines that went into the complaints department. And when you call Telstra, you don't normally get the complaints department necessarily. You get, you get the front of house, you get the sales team, you get whatever it might be, and they have to transfer you. By reducing the number of phone lines that could go through to the complaints department, a lot of those transfers weren't able to be made. And so either the person at the front on the call had to try and resolve the problem themselves, or the customer went away disappointed, frustrated, but unable to make a complaint. So that key outcome, that measurement, the number of complaints through to the complaints team did indeed go down by more than 20%. The executive got his bonus. But was that really what his bosses wanted? Absolutely not. And so you need to be careful with any measurements you have in your business. It's easy to go, that has a positive impact on my organization. But are you actually measuring the outcome to get the positive that you want, or are you getting caught up in the measurement? So a quick explanation of those five. CAC is the cost, the client acquisition cost. How much does it cost you to get every new client? It's an important thing when it comes to those channels, brand, is it's costing you $1,000 to get every new client in the door. You got to make sure your business model is selling them for much more than $1,000 gross profit. If you don't know that number, you might be growing top line, but actually bleeding money out the back. Somewhat related to that is LTV, lifetime value, which you saw on my pricing slides. It's great if the client comes in and buys that one coffin. The lifetime value is the price of that one coffin. But if you can build loyalty, you can build repeat customers, subscription, membership, multiple packages, then driving up that lifetime value. If every client is worth $10,000 now, not $1,000, that changes a whole lot of positive things in your business. And it can impact the client acquisition cost. Okay, well, maybe it now costs $2,000 to get a client because the cost has gone up, but we're getting $10,000 out of each of them, still super profitable. Net profit. And within different organizations, you may not be exposed to all of these numbers, but revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. And that touches on these next two. It's all well and good to be a $10 million business. Anybody can be a $10 million business. You just need to buy $100 million worth of iPhones and sell them at 90% off. You will absolutely turn over $10 million in revenue. You will lose $90 million plus in that business. I don't recommend that. All other things being equal, profit is nice. All other things being equal, free cash flow is even nicer, because it's certainly possible to run a profitable business, a business on which you have to pay tax, and still not actually have the cash flow that spits out of that. And so measuring both of those numbers is incredibly valuable, and where a lot of small businesses get lost because measuring free cash flow is harder than measuring net profit. The ATO needs you to do net profit, zero, etc. All the accounting software is built to show you net profit plus operating profit, EBITDA, and some related terms. Digging into the free cash flow is much harder. But if you're going to buy a business, I would rather have a business that had $500,000 of free cash that it could give me each year than a business with $1 million net profit on which I had to pay tax, but which only had $200,000 of actual free cash. These are connected to different business models, these kind of things, but it's useful to know. It's not just getting in the revenue. It's not just making sure it's profitable. It's also making sure it's cash flow positive. The last one, NPS, Net Promoter Score. This is somewhat controversial. It's a very useful measurement. It was built for simplicity. The idea is for those existing clients that you have, whether you're specifically looking for referrals, repeat business, or just to understand how well you're doing, to ask them one simple question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer our business to a friend or colleague? And that one question, they just give it a score out of 1 to 10. You take 9s and 10s, those real advocates. You subtract the 1s through 6s that are the assassins that are holding you back. You get a net number, advocates minus the assassins. That net is a score, and that's your net promoter score. Bigger the score, the more advocates you have, the fewer assassins you have. In theory, more happy clients you have, the better the delivery. In practice, does not work for every industry. Does not necessarily help grow a business. It's a really great measurement that was invented for its simplicity. It's very, very simple to do, and a lot of people, clients now understand it and will therefore answer that question because they know exactly why it is that you're asking. They're used to the question. But like all 5 of those key outcomes, it's not necessarily the best thing to help you grow your business, to help get revenue. However, if you don't measure these things, if you don't know what is happening within your business, how can you come back to the revenue flow? This is your last chance for questions while I do a little bit of a wrap up and a summary. And at the simple level, Those measurements, the key outcomes are there to know how the revenue is flowing through your business and to know how successful or otherwise each of those 8 areas might be. You can do a gut feel. If you've got some crosses, then dig a little bit deeper. Maybe you can see and you know, and being small business, you can make some quick changes, some quick decisions to change across, even just to a neutral, to help unblock that revenue, to keep it flowing. Maybe you do need to do more of an analysis in some of those. What is the brand? What do we stand for? What is the business model? What is the pricing? We're going to really amp up the revenue. We want to add 10, 20% or more next year. How do we really pull some of these levers? And then getting into the detail. What are the very specific aspects of revenue within your business that can be improved, that will make a difference? And I hope that your actions from attending, watching this workshop are clear. You've got an idea as to what are the revenue areas of the business that could most improve. They may not be across, it might be a tick, but they could just keep being better. But what are the areas that you have some influence or responsibility for that could improve? What are you going to go and change? And what specific outcomes are going to tell you that that change has been successful? This brings an end to this specific conversation. Thank you. So I will send around to all of those who are live and to anyone who's watching this and wants that information. Here are my contact details, the workbook to go through, and some of those extra links to Blackboard Fridays videos, my website in general. We go a little bit deeper on some of those many different areas of the different revenue flow. But if you take nothing else from today, I thank you for attending. Thank you for your concentration. Revenue is energy. It either flows through your organization or it gets stuck. And if it gets stuck in a whole lot of different places, then that will have big flow-on effects. You do have that ability day by day, month by month, absolutely 90-day plan after 90-day plan to be looking at what's working, what's not, and what are some of the specific changes you can make that might help that revenue flow. Revenue flow is the lifeblood of the business, so you, your organization, will benefit when you unlock it. I'll see you all again next month.